The last lab of the semester is the muscular system. This is another big one. It has about the same amount of material as the skeletal lab. We don't have to cover as much because what you're going to see is there's going to be a whole bunch of functions that you have to memorize and look up on your own. Whereas skeletal, we didn't do so much of that. So there's not as much to label, but you're going to have to know not only the name of every muscle, but also its function. Before we get into that, we look at three types of muscle: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac muscle. There's a slide of each here, and then there's some questions to answer. So this is skeletal muscle. We need to talk about the shape, how many nuclei, and then whether there are striations. So skeletal muscle fibers are very, very long. They're skinny. This is one fiber, this is another fiber, this is another one. But it's very long. It's continuing off the end of the slide here. There are multiple nuclei per fiber. So each of these nuclei go together to the same cell. Keep in mind that a muscle fiber is a cell. It's kind of a confusing term, but a muscle fiber is a muscle cell. And then skeletal muscle is striated. There are very clearly striations in this muscle here. Then there is smooth muscle, which is kind of it's a elongated but shorter cell. They're kind of pointy on the end. We call them spindle shaped. There's one nucleus per fiber, and they do not have striations. The cardiac muscle is shorter, not spindle. They're not generally pointy on the ends, because you can see this is one cell here, and here's another, and they come together with this little blunt end here. There's one nucleus per fiber, but these are striated. Striations aren't usually as obvious in cardiac muscle as they are in skeletal muscle, but they are in fact there. So when you look at cardiac muscle, we said these little blunt ends here, those are intercalated discs. Those are the connections between one cell and another. So if you see a picture of one of these three, you need to be able to tell me which one it is. And so use these criteria, these descriptions, to tell yourself which one it is. There's some questions for you to answer. And then we get to a basic diagram of a muscle fiber. This is skeletal muscle fiber. We have a bunch of things that we need to label. So we're going to kind of work our way in from the outside. And so wrapped around one skeletal muscle fiber is the sarcolemma. This yellow membrane here is the sarcolemma. Remember, a skeletal muscle fiber is a skeletal muscle cell. And so the membrane around a cell is the plasma membrane. The sarcolemma is the plasma membrane of a muscle cell. Same thing, different term. So this is the cell membrane. Inside of that is the cytoplasm. But because it's a muscle cell, it's called the sarcoplasm rather than cytoplasm. This is a cell, and so it has to have a nucleus. It's a skeletal muscle cell, and so there are multiple nuclei. So here is one nucleus, but all of these purple things are nuclei. It's a cell, and so it has to have mitochondria. We have mitochondria here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Skeletal muscle fibers have a bunch of mitochondria because they need a bunch of ATP. And so basically anywhere we have empty space, usually packed on the outside, though, are the mitochondria. Then we get into more of the muscle-specific structures. Let's start with the blue and the purple here. And so two blues and a purple. This little unit here is a triad. Tri for three. This is a triad. in that triad, the purple is a T-tubule, or a transverse tubule. The blue, because we have two of them, this is a terminal cisterna. So that is labeled up here. So we have two terminal cisterna and one T-tubule. The blue kind of extends into this meshwork here, and that is the sarcoplasmic reticulum. It looks like endoplasmic reticulum, very different function though. Sarcoplasmic reticulum and to that matter the terminal cisterna store calcium. That's where calcium is stored. That sarcoplasmic reticulum is wrapped around this kind of circular structure. That circular structure, this is a myofibril. That's a bundle of thick and thin filaments. Okay? If we look at one myofibril lengthwise, we see there is a repeating unit. And again, this will make more sense if you've done the lecture portion first. But that repeating unit is a sarcomere. That is one contractile unit of our myofibril. If we take one myofibril and we look at what makes it up, we see that there are two sizes of fibers here. We have thick and thin filaments. So thick is the purple, larger one. Thin is the smaller, kind of orangish yellow one. So this is a sarcomere, and this is a model of a sarcomere that we have in the lab. To me, this is the best model in the entire lab. If you have a chance to get in and look at this, or find a video of this model online, this is a great model. This shows everything about a sarcomere and how it works. And if you're able to actually play with it with your own hands, I think it will really help you understand what's going on here. So we don't have a diagram of a sarcomere, but we have the picture of this model. And so I can use this same picture on the lab exam, and you need to know these parts. We have A band, I band, Z disc, and M line. So M line is the middle line here. A band, I band, and A band and I band go into the lecture, figure out where they are, what the difference between the A and I bands are, and then find those on here. I'm not going to point them out for you. If you want to ask me, if you think you know and you're questioning yourself, send me a message. If you send me a message, I'll tell you whether you are right or if you are wrong. The Z discs are the end of the model, these little zigzag parts here. So what actually happens is the Z discs are attached to this slider. And so the thin filaments, which are the red and yellow and green ones, can actually slide in towards the M line. The thick filament is attached to the M line. They stay in one place. Okay? So on the thick filaments, we have myosin heads and tails. And so the heads are these little golf club pieces, golf club heads that stick out. It's hard to see the tails on here, but you can kind of see that there's blue lines running along the black. Okay? If you see this in person, it'll be obvious. It looks like a golf club with the shaft of the golf club running along the fiber and then the heads sticking off. The thin filaments are these up here. The actin is the more structural part of the fiber. That's the red. The tropomyosin is the yellow. And the green dots or balls are the troponin. This down here is a neuromuscular junction where the neuron kind of comes together with the muscle and tells it to contract. It controls when the muscle is going to contract. And so these fibers running left and right are our muscle fibers, where the neuron, which is the black part, meshes with it So this is the neuromuscular junction. What's coming down to the neuromuscular junction is the axon. So this is the axon branch. The very, very end of the axon here is the axon terminal. And we said this was a skeletal muscle fiber. So then we get into our muscles. And so here we have names and functions. You need to know both. If I give you this diagram and tell me the name of this, not only do you need to tell me the name, but you need to be able to tell me the function. And so this here is the frontalis muscle. And so you would also need to be able to tell me that the frontalis muscle raises the eyebrows. So you have a lot of memorization to do here. Don't skip it. These questions will be two-part. First part is name, second part is function. If you only know the name, you're not going to get the second question. So let's go through these names. I'll zoom in a little bit more. We said this was the frontalis. This is the forehead muscle. This donut-shaped muscle going around the eye is the orbicularis oculi. On the cheek here, we have the zygomaticus, but that zygomaticus is underneath these over here. In the cheek, the outermost muscle is the masseter, and underneath the masseter is the buccinator. Imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger saying the buccinator, right? And so you have the masseter, then the buccinator, and then under that is the zygomaticus. We'll learn the cheek bone is the zygomatic bone. And so that'll help you at that point, that once you know that this muscle here is a zygomaticus bone. Going around your mouth, essentially your lips, is your orbicularis oris. And then this very, very large muscle, there's one on each side, here on the front of your neck, is the platysma. Looking at the head from the side, we see some of the same muscles, but also some new ones. So here is the frontalis, orbicularis oculi, masseter, orbicularis oris, buccinator, hidden back in there. And then we have the platysma, the front of the neck. But now we have this one. And this is the sternocleidomastoid. This is one that you interact with a fair amount. You may or may not notice it. But if you just tilt your head to the side, tilt it until it doesn't want to go any further, and you'll feel some tightness. That tightness is the sternocleidomastoid. It connects just behind your ear. So tilt your head to the side and use your fingers, just feel the side of your neck. And you'll feel that very tight sternocleidomastoid muscle there. We move down a little bit to the upper body. On the outside of your shoulder, it's a very, very large muscle called the deltoid. If you get something like the flu shot, they're going to put it into that deltoid. On the front of your shoulder and your chest is the pectoralis major. So when people talk about their pecs, that's what they're talking about. But underneath the pectoralis major is the pectoralis minor. It's minor because it's much smaller. It is under the major. You have to remove the major to see the minor. That is this here. The posterior side of the upper body, we see different muscles. This very, very large one that controls, kind of goes along the back, your spine, your shoulder blade, up into your neck, is your trapezius, or your traps. Down below that, kind of on your side, is the latissimus dorsi. And then over here, we have three small muscles. Together, they make up the rotator cuff. But they each have slightly different functions, but they work together to stabilize the shoulder. This one here is the supraspinatus. This one is the infraspinatus. supraspinatus. Supra, think super or above. Infra means below. Above and below this bone here. So look for the bone. The one above it is supraspinatus. The one below it is infraspinatus. And then this bottom one, the third one, is the teres minor. Moving on down, we get to the abdomen. So we're going to start on the left hand side here. This is the external oblique, and then this white part here is the aponeurosis. It's kind of a membrane. On the right hand side, we have removed the external oblique and the aponeurosis. You need to realize that in order to understand that you're seeing things underneath that. You would not see any of these muscles unless the external oblique and the aponeurosis were removed. So here we've cut it, we've pulled it back. We're seeing the next layer underneath that. This one is the internal oblique. So the outer layer is external oblique. Underneath that is internal oblique. If we cut the external oblique and look under that, we see the transversus abdominis. And then under that, in the center here, is your rectus abdominis. Rectus abdominis is your six-pack. For some of us, it may be more like a keg, but it should be a six-pack. Looking at the back, the posterior view, we're just looking at one group of muscles here, the label. This is the spinalis. And this runs up and down along your spine. Next are the muscles that help us breathe. They're respiratory muscles. So here we're looking from the side, a lateral view. These are under our ribs. Keep in mind that they are under our ribs. We have the external and internal intercostals. So the external are just under the ribs, and then under those are the internal. So this one here, which is the internal, is pointing to muscles under this layer that you see primarily, which is the external intercostals. This is an inferior view, so we're looking up at our lungs from down below. What you're seeing is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the main muscle that controls the size of our lungs. The intercostals help squeeze our lungs. The diaphragm pulls the lungs up and down to control the size and help us to breathe. Then we start heading on down the arm, so the upper limb. First we have the biceps. Biceps are called the biceps, bi meaning two, because there are two connections. 1, 2. Down below that, kind of in the elbow area, is the brachialis. There's two parts to it, one on either side. And then in your forearm, this main muscle here is the brachioradialis. The posterior view of your arm, where the biceps and the anterior side of your arm, we have the triceps in the back. And it's the triceps because there are three parts. 1, 2, 3. So the triceps and the biceps are opposite of each other. Biceps flex your forearm, triceps are going to extend or straighten your forearm. The legs are actually more complicated than the arms are. So in general, they kind of look the same, but we have some more muscles. So we're going to start at the top. So this is the anterior view of a leg. We have up here by our pelvis and our hip, we have the iliopsoas. So that is this. Running down from the hip on the lateral side of the leg, here is the tensor fascia. This large muscle on the front of your thigh is the rectus femoris, think femur, rectus femoris. This one that crosses your thigh, starts on the lateral side, runs to the medial or inside, is the sartorius. This one that runs down the medial side of the leg is the gracilis. Coming on down towards the knee, on the lateral side, we have the vastus lateralis. On the medial side is the vastus medialis. If we take these and we peel them back, we remove the rectus femoris, we'll see this muscle underneath, which is the vastus intermedius. So intermedius is middle, lateralis is on the lateral side, medialis is on the medial side. And then under that, we have the tibialis anterior. So notice on this one, we can actually see that bone. So we've gone further down into the leg. Looking at the posterior view of the leg, staying still up in the upper leg, we have the gluteus maximus here. This is cut. You can see it would stretch from here up across to here. It's cut so that we can see the muscles underneath. Up top and below the maximus is the gluteus medius. Running down the back of your upper leg, on the medial side is the semitendinosus. More lateral is the biceps femoralis. Then down towards the knee is the semimembranosus. For the back of the leg, we have the calf muscle, which is the gastrocnemius. Underneath the gastrocnemius is the soleus. So we have removed the gastrocnemius, which has two main pieces to it. See the one large piece underneath, which is the soleus. The gastrocnemius is connected to the heel, or the calcaneus, through the calcaneal tendon, which is the Achilles tendon. Now we have some questions for you, quite a few of them, and we're at the end. Remember, you need to know names and functions. Do not skip on the functions. You will regret it. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, good luck on the lab final. This is the end of your lab experiments. Get this filled in, get it turned in, get your final exam taken, and good luck. If you have any questions, let me know.